Hey there, thanks for tuning into the podcast, We're Just Talking About It. Your host for the show is Major Retired Jason Chris Hauk. He's the author of an award-winning modern English Quran interpretation, and he speaks nationally about Islam. He holds a master's in Middle East Studies, he studied Dari and Arabic, and teaches Introduction to Islam courses at numerous institutions.
Hi, I'm Jason Hauk. This is We're Just Talking About It. We're going to explore the myths and stereotypes in America that we've all heard since September 11th. Since that horrible tragedy, we have done a bad job in our country of explaining what Islam is, what Islam isn't, and helping to bridge the divide between Muslims and non-Muslims. Let's change that.
Hey guys, I'm Holly, the producer for We're Just Talking About It. And have you ever just wondered what the difference is between Sunni or Shia, or how to use Sharia law in a sentence? We're getting down to the bottom, to the basics of Islam 101 for the average American who just wants to learn how to talk about it.
Thanks for tuning in to episode number 8 of We're Just Talking About It. We're super excited this week because we have our first guest on the show. Shireen Qudosi is a Muslim American writer on faith, identity, and belonging. She comes from a family of refugees and has hopscotched across the world from Pakistan to Iran, Germany, and finally to the United States. She's now known as a top 10 Muslim reformer, a role in which she advocates for radically honest conversations. So first of all, Shireen, thank you so much for being with us today on the We're Just Talking About It podcast. You're our first guest, so we're really excited, and we have a lot of great, interesting topics to cover. So I'm going to throw it over to Jason, and he will get started with our first question.
Hey, welcome, Shireen. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. Thank you.
Awesome. So we have talked before, and I had told you a lot of time when I go around the country and I speak about Islam, people have a lot of questions about, well, how would a Muslim answer this question, or you should bring Muslims out with you when you talk. And so I thought with the podcast, here's something we can do. I can bring people in because it doesn't cost any money to make a phone call. So why don't you first tell us, where do you live today and how did you get to America?
Yeah, so I'm in Southern California, and I got here in 1987. So my story starts in Pakistan, and my dad is Afghan, so he was a refugee from the war, and they settled in Pakistan with my mother, who's Pakistani. And from there, when I was 5, we left and we went to Iran, simply because the social climate in Pakistan is really, really, it's like a caste system, and so you are where you are, and it's very, very hard to move in any sort of meaningful direction beyond your social status. And so when we went to Iran, we were there for about a few months, and then we settled in Germany. We were there for 2 years, and it was really challenging as refugees for my father to get paperwork to work normally, and then I had health issues there with the climate coming from Pakistan, and so there are so many complications there that we ended up moving to California, which was an immense challenge. I say it took me 10 years to get used to the U.S. after being in Germany, and another 10 years later, I actually started liking it here. So it was a very, very day and night difference when people say, oh, it must have been really hard to move from Pakistan to Germany. And of course, the real challenge is moving from Germany to the U.S.
And so you ended up with your family in California, and your dad is a refugee from this war. And just for our viewers, this is the Soviet Union fighting in Afghanistan, correct?
Right.
Okay, so what was it like for your mom and dad, and for you as a small child coming to America? What were some of the things you noticed about America, being from your ancestral background and your religious background? Were there things that stick out in your head that kind of shocked you or were interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question, because it's so funny, Jason. You know, you have your experience as an individual, like my own experience, and even that changes as you grow up and you realize, you know, more about the world and more about the reality of the sort of world we're dealing with and everything that's going on today. So that changes, and then you also learn to humanize your parents. And so as you get older, you get to understand them in a way that you just cannot understand them as children, and I think anyone can understand that. So for my parents, for my dad, it was very difficult to leave Afghanistan. The war never left him, and he was a very, very stoic, a very proud man. So if anyone's ever seen Khalid Hosseini's The Kite Runner, I really recommend at least watch the movie. There's a scene in the swap meet And it's when these two generals, or these two sort of very dignified men, are coming together in a swap meet where their children are now selling shoes. And a swap meet is typically a very sort of a lowly bazaar. And you see these two men that had these very grand lives back in Afghanistan come together. It's a very poignant scene because their body language tells you that they've never really left, and they haven't abandoned that dignity that they had. They still carried that with them. And that was very much my dad. That was always him. And it was very difficult for him to go for Afghanistan, where he had immense wealth and influence. He was a jeweler for King Zahir Shah, and he was very prominent in that sort of upper circle of society, to leave everything behind and go to Pakistan, where he was a tailor. And despite, we might say, oh, a tailor is an amazing thing, in Pakistan it's sort of the lowest of the low in terms of the status of your job. And so he wasn't respected. We lived in, what could be seen as the ghetto. It was a pretty abysmal place even when I was young and knew nothing else, and knew that, we didn't have that much. And for my mom,
was that here?
Pardon?
Was that here in America? Were you?
No, this was in Pakistan. So when he moved from Germany to my dad moved from Afghanistan and he had to flee as a refugee, they went to Pakistan, and that's where my brother was born and myself. We were both born there. So for him, coming from Afghanistan to Pakistan was really, really jarring, because you go from being very esteemed and very privileged with, wealth and power, to nothing, to having nothing. And so for my mom, it was always a challenge. She never fit into Pakistani society. And she doesn't really subscribe to that sort of elitism that is really relevant in Pakistani society. So from there, when they went to Germany, it was a struggle just economically in terms of being able to work in a stable job, but we really did otherwise love it there, simply because we had family there. We had a very strong sense of community. We were in a very small town, so it was a really beautiful, idyllic life. And because of the economic reasons of not being able to work typically, we had to come to the U.S. And here it was, it was really, really hard. I think my dad, never really left the war. And so no matter where we went, that sort of aspect of who he was, was really diminished. And I can see that in his photos. So when I look at a photo of him when he was in his, when I was a kid or before that, and I look at a photo of him as he's growing older and towards the end of his life, he really lost his spark. He lost what made him him.
What job, Shireen, did he end up doing here in America?
He was a jeweler.
He was a jeweler here too. Okay.
Yeah. And then with my mom, she's a really fascinating case study, because she came here when we were in Germany. She made us go to church, Jason. She made us go to church in Germany because she wanted us to see how people lived. We learned the language in 3 months. We were really integrated with the community. I went to Sunday school for a while, we colored pictures of Jesus, and it was really fantastic. And she comes here, and she works as a teacher, and so the credential criteria are a little bit different. She could only work at private school, so she worked at the first Islamic school in Orange County. And that impacted her in the sense that she had started becoming more religious, praying more, being more influenced by that community. And she tried to get us to go into Islamic school as well, and tried to get us to become more outwardly religious. And it was a little too late by that point. You are who you are.
How old were you when you got to the U.S.?
I was 7.
Okay, so you were still pretty young.
Now, yeah. Shireen, with your dad kind of suffering some identity issues because of having to move and lose his job, do you remember feeling anything like that? Did you kind of go through this identity crisis and kind of wonder where you belonged or what you wanted to do?
So when I went to Iran, I was a lot happier in Iran than I was in Pakistan. I really hated Pakistan, even as a child. Knowing nothing else, I knew that it wasn't a very happy place. When we went to Germany, it took us about, a few months to settle in. There was a bit of xenophobia and racism at first because they thought we were Turkish. And so that was a challenge initially, but I really did love it there. When we came to the U.S., I remember being on a plane, and the entire duration of the flight from Germany to the States, I practiced my name. I was going to reinvent my identity. And so I said, it's a new name, it's a new start. I can rewrite my name any way I want. And how are they going to know that that's not the right spelling? And So I practiced different ways to spell my name, and that's when I changed it from Shireen to Shirin, and I thought I was amazing.
That's where you are mentally. Yeah, your mom and dad are really searching for themselves. You're trying to get your name straight.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a new Shireen. But when I came here, I really hated it. I hated it. Initially, we were in San Francisco where we had a ton of Afghan relatives, and it was great. But then we settled in Southern California, and I really hated it because it was such a jarring environment physically. You know, you go from lush, Germany, it looked very much like the south of France, to Hacienda Heights, which is barren, and the culture was different, the language was different. Even though I knew English, I wasn't very fluent in reading and writing it. So it was just, it wasn't a home. It never felt like home here for quite some time.
And so you're not even a teenager yet. You're in school. What was it like being a child in school, coming from such a different background? I mean, California is pretty cosmopolitan, but I'm sure in the 80s it was probably a little bit different than it is today. Did you experience anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So when I came to second grade, in first grade, I dealt with a really racist teacher, and it was a horrible experience. And just in terms of nothing that she said outwardly, but her attitude of disdain towards the fact that I wasn't 100% fluent in reading and writing English, even though I could speak it perfectly fine. And so I did feel that. And I think it obviously colored my experience a little bit early on. When I got to second grade, pretty quickly, in between the time that we came here, I remember the teacher was fantastic, the classroom was fantastic, but I remember her saying, why don't we change your name? Why don't we give you a nickname? Just so that it's easier for everyone. And I just thought, no, because I dealt with so much coming here. First of all, I worked really hard to change that name.
You got it the way you want.
I got the spelling down. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I dealt with so much change just coming here. You're leaving all your toys behind, which, at 5 is a big deal. And you're leaving your friends behind, and then you're coming here. I thought they can adapt to one different name versus everything else I've already had to change or give up. But as I got older, it really wasn't an issue, and I think that it's different for kids nowadays, of course. So, for example, when I'd be asked, oh, where are you from? I'd say, Pakistan or Afghanistan, and I would get such a sort of blank stare. And then I would just say, oh, Asia. I mean, everyone knows, you're Indian, South Asian, it's Asia. But nowadays, people know what Afghanistan is. They know what Pakistan is. That understanding is colored by their own experience. And so it's a lot more difficult, and my sympathy goes out to children who have to sort of, be the first point of contact for a lot of these children. And in the climate that we're in today, it's much more difficult.
I can see that today, with especially with the internet. I mean, the kids just know so much more. The teachers know more. Asia
Absolutely.
won't cut it. You're going to have to talk a little bit. Explain it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's much more of a challenge. They have to be a lot more well-versed. And so a lot of parents I know have that conversation. This is what you say, this is what you do, this is how you can respond. And so it's definitely much more difficult. I feel that I had it easier. I had it a lot easier than a lot of people today do.
And that continued through your teenage years. Did you go to a private high school or a public school? I mean, what was it like as you got older?
Yeah, so I went to public schools pretty much all the way through. And as I got older, what's funny is it wasn't the religion, it was really the culture that came into play. The religion wasn't part of the day-to-day life. It was really the culture, and that being that, you can't date, you can't go to dances, prom doesn't exist for you, you have to be home by a certain time every day, and that means like right after school.
Did that come from your mom and dad both, or just your mom or just your dad?
My mom, but Afghan culture is a little bit more liberal than Pakistani culture, but obviously the mom tends to run the rules and run the house, and so it was her rules. And so it was a very, very strict. I wasn't even allowed to cross the street by myself. And so you can imagine how that shapes a person's psyche as you're growing up. You can be really good at school. You can get your A's. But if you're not allowed to have the freedom to explore and to make mistakes, within a framework, it really is, it's handicapping for the things that come later in life.
Right. Like, I mean, even if you do get some close friends and some, have some relationships, you can't go meet them somewhere. You can't take that next step where you grow together or have an experience together. It's pretty much stalled, in the classroom.
Yeah.
And you just don't see them again.
Yeah. In my mom's defense, I will say thank God she didn't let me hang out with anybody else because I hung out with the worst of the worst in high school. So I'm really, really glad she kept me from, meeting people.
The one
outside of
mother in
school to
America
an
who was
extent.
right. I have to keep you away from these kids. They're no good.
Right.
And with that, we will wrap up part 1 of our 3-part episodes with Shireen. Coming up in our future episodes, she will talk about what it's like to raise her own son as a Muslim in America, and what reform looks like and how we can make a difference in bridging the gap between non-Muslims and Muslims in America.
Thanks for listening today. We're just talking about it. We are trying to get through a hard conversation. It's not easy to talk about other people's religions, but you just made the first step. Please join us again on the next episode.
And if you guys have any questions, we'd love to hear them. You can email us at WJTANC. We're just talking about it, North Carolina. That's WJTANC@gmail.com. Share with anybody that you think could benefit from these conversations because we're just talking about it.
So thanks for listening. Go out there, keep talking, and be nice to each other.
Your host of the podcast, We're Just Talking About It, is Jason Chris Hauk. He's a retired U.S. Army Foreign Area Officer and has spent over 20 years studying Islam. He holds a master's degree in Middle East Studies from the Naval Postgraduate School, and he is a Malone Fellow in Arab and Islamic Studies.
Your producer and co-host for this podcast, We're Just Talking About It, is Holly Fleck. She has a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism and spent 5 years in television news reporting. And she is genuinely interested in learning how to have a conversation about Islam as an American.